a major crisis, good and bad effects of knowledge. A more wild prediction is that as we begin to increase our control over the genetic code and to do genetic engineering, which we will do, we will change our genome so as to eliminate disease and then to start improving ourselves. We face the danger, enormous benefits, increased lifespan, elimination of disease, increase of intelligence, who knows? But we also face the danger of speciation. This is directed human evolution which we carry out, and it can cause our splitting, the human Homo sapiens splitting into different species. Is that good, bad? Can we live with it? I sort of think it is inevitable if you look at the 3 billion year history of life. And finally, at this period of 1,000 years, I think we will begin to spread throughout the galaxy. Again, that's just based on the fact that that's what life does. It occupies all possible niches, and there are a lot of niches out there in the galaxy. We won't spread by sending rocket ships with people. We will send maybe microscopic robots with lots of information, and they will reconstruct life on those planets. Or we will send, most of what we will send will be in binary code. But eventually, one way or another, as life always does, we will spread throughout the galaxy, if we survive. So to end, science will be even more important in tomorrow's world. It will continue to reveal more of nature's secrets. It will increase our control over nature's forces. And those will have good consequences which are intended and bad that are unintended. But hopefully the culture of science will inspire us to exploit the good and avoid the bad. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Gross, for that fascinating lecture and for deepening our appreciation for science, for figuring out the universe, for understanding the human life on Earth, and for confronting the issues and problems that we face today. We are now ready for the open forum. And the audience in the theater, as well as our faculty, students, staff, and alumni from 9 UP campuses all over the country who are at the moment video conferencing with us may ask Dr. Gross a few questions. As mentioned earlier, this program is on webcast live over the internet, so our alumni all over the world who have been watching the webcast are also able to participate and ask their questions through the various chat channels that have been made available to us. Let's begin with a question or two from the audience inside the theater. If you would raise your hand, I will call you and I will ask you to approach one of the microphones on the aisles. You would kindly introduce yourself and please phrase your question as briefly as possible so we can accommodate as many questions as we possibly can.
Good morning, Professor Gross. I'm Cesar Saloma. I would like to start with the question of regarding the future of science and its traditional disciplines. And the questions that you were raising, which are very interesting. Will there be an evolution of these traditional disciplines so that the questions could be answered more sensibly? The traditional disciplines of physics, chemistry, and so on. Do we need to realign them or to redefine the boundaries? So that, thank Thank you very much.
So the question was about disciplines are just names. In 400 years ago, Newton was held the chair of natural philosophy, and he was interested in anything that was natural. These disciplines are created by universities, just to divide up things and make it easier to run the university. In the 19th century, this began, but before that, everyone was a natural philosopher or a scientist interested in all natural phenomena. And so there is no real meaningful distinction between the disciplines. In some sense, everything is physics. That's how we like to think, because physics, describes all of matter and all of phenomena. But there are people who call themselves chemists who are interested specifically in the behavior of molecules, which of course is physics, but it's a very important part of physics, so they separate off. This can cause problems and is bad in general for science because many interesting problems are often at the borderline of these so-called different disciplines. In my department at Santa Barbara, I have two colleagues who won the Nobel Prize. They're physicists, but they won the Nobel Prize in chemistry. So many interesting questions now are really in this borderline, and I don't think it's a good idea to redefine the disciplines. What is important is to make it easy and possible for people from different concentrations or different disciplines to work together on problems of mutual interest. And that's happening in physics and chemistry, and biology, physics and mathematics, in physics and astrophysics, and cosmology, all over the board. And that will continue. The problems are not defined by university departments, but nature. And they often outside.
Thank you. Let me now give the floor to Dr. Arcilia. Yes, Dr. Arcilia.
Professor Gross, I'm a geologist. There were times in the Earth that was hotter than now. The Cretaceous, for example, we had no glaciers, but life continued on. So I'm just wondering that maybe the dire predictions of global warming may not be, first, it's not a theory yet, because there's still a lot of debate, especially among Earth scientists, about this issue. Because there have been, in fact, times in the Earth that are hotter than now, and there were no humans, so humans could not have been the reason. That's one comment. The second one is regarding the population. I'm just curious, because the two fastest growing countries in the world are the two most populated ones, China and India. And to suggest that you should stop sustained growth for those who are not, for example, the Philippines, we're not growing as fast. Isn't it, the question should be focused to the developed countries like the United States? Thank you.
No, well, first about global warming. The question was, the Earth has the thermal history of the Earth shows lots of variations of temperature, but nothing on this time scale. And this variation of temperature is clearly correlated with CO2 emissions. So this is not part of a secular variation, and it's happening very rapidly and accelerating. And I don't think that, Homo sapiens can't deal with it. I agree it's not a big problem in the sense that humans could easily survive. We could have a total collapse of civilization and reduce the population to what it was most of our history, of 1 million or so people spread out around the world, and they would, as they did for millions of years, live with these temperature variations. But we live in a very populous world with approaching 9 billion people, which is much more precarious and susceptible to disruption. So what we're talking about are not threats to perhaps the extinction of the human race, but to civilization. I was not advocating that underdeveloped countries stop their growth. What I really was advocating was that two things: was that developed countries think about stopping their consumption, but I was trying to address the problem a little more broadly. It is true that most of the world is still highly underdeveloped and quite poor, and does need to and will develop to the standard of living that those of us in the United States or in Europe enjoy. But where do we go from there? If you look at the growth of GDP, energy consumption, material consumption, mineral consumption, in the United States, it is still accelerating. It is any country in the world, no matter how rich they are, if the economy does not grow in a given year, then the politicians are in danger of being booted out of office. Growth is taken to be a sacred goal of humankind, not just when you need it to eradicate disease and poverty, but for it to stay in political office. Why is that? Not only politically, but economically. Economists will tell you if you don't have growth, everything is disastrous. Our whole economic system, capitalism, which works fantastically in this model of creating more and more and more, but only if we continue to create more and more and more. We've tried alternatives to this system. They haven't worked, but we need some alternative. I think that's partly at the root cause of our problem, that we can see no other way to exist as an economic social system throughout the world except by growing, growing, growing. Is there no other way? Is there never going to be a time, like in the United States, for example, with our standard of living, where enough is enough? Or instead of more, we want something better or different, more sustainable? I think this is going to be, in the end, the major issue, and people are not talking about it or trying to come up with new solutions. And I certainly don't have the solution, but the problem, I think, is self-evident.